Hello Lions, Greg Orme here, and I'm excited to share a solution with you about a challenge I think we all face in our professional lives. Research shows that in our school days and our work environments, they both tend to blunt our creative potential. We all face trade-offs. Should I, on this project, deliver something that's truly creative and innovative, or just play it safe and deliver something that's a bit boring? Should I challenge the status quo or go along with what the group is saying and thinking? You know, I see it all the time in my leadership development work at London Business School and elsewhere. I work with truly eminent and senior people, but some of them have just lost their mojo somewhere along the way. Fitting in, just getting along became a habit. And of course, it happens in the agency world too, and other creative businesses I've worked with. And this is why I'm so excited to share some insights on what you can do about it, maybe some alternative habits. So do allow me to share the big picture before we dive into the detail. In my book, The Human Edge, I reveal 4 human superpowers to help you to thrive in the disrupted 2020s. Creativity is, of course, one of these 4 C's. Another is consciousness. This is about finding meaning in your work and also making the precious time to be creative. Collaboration is, of course, vital to turn your ideas into reality. In this video, we're going to focus on curiosity. It's a perfect place to start because it unlocks the other 3 superpowers. I'm going to reveal practical, science-based tips and techniques to help you to have better ideas and take your career to the next level. Along the way, I'll explain what curiosity does to us, what it can do for us, and how we can have more of it. Academics have struggled and found it tricky to pin curiosity down. It's that weird compulsion we human beings have just to know more. It's having to watch that Netflix episode after the cliffhanger ending. We've all been there during the lockdown. I know I have. It's a weird thing to study because it involves both thinking and feeling, which is why sometimes it's called the knowledge emotion. Anything that's emotional is always deeply personal. So let me tell you about a traumatic moment in my childhood that has made curiosity really personal to me. When I was 7 years old, my parents were really worried about me. I wasn't doing very well at school. Like a lot of boys of that age, I was more interested in going out and having fun than reading books. As a result, my reading age was 2 years younger than it should have been. This parental anxiety was put into context, as life tends to do, when I contracted a potentially deadly disease. One afternoon, I was walking home from school with a pounding headache and sick to my stomach. Much later, my mum told me that the alarm bells started to ring for her when I refused the chicken pie she'd bought for my supper. This was the first time, and probably the last, I've ever turned down a pastry-based food product. It turned out I developed meningitis. Now, meningitis causes fluid to collect on your brain, too much fluid, and you slip into a coma, which, apparently is not good. The doctors told my parents to constantly read to me day and night to keep me from falling asleep. There was a chance I might never wake up. Now I've become a writer. Looking back, it's weird that reading kept me alive. I think that's why I'm so passionate about it. And maybe not surprising that much of my professional life has been spent figuring out how to make myself and other people more engaged and more curious about the world. I mean, we've never needed curiosity more than in 2021. We desperately need a creative and curious response to a world that's changing at accelerating speeds. But it's not just that. Curiosity also preserves and protects your unique humanity in a digital world. More than half of the globe is now on social media, and we're scrolling for a greater part of our day than ever before. The pandemic at work has also accelerated the uptake of technology. Suddenly, Doctors were seeing their patients online, teachers were giving virtual classrooms, and I think and forecast that Zoom working will be here to stay, at least part-time, for all of us. Also, at the same time, for the first time in history, artificial intelligence is coming for white-collar jobs. 250 years ago, in the first industrial revolution, machines replaced our arms and legs in the production process. In the fourth industrial revolution, machines are busily replacing our brains. Even before this pandemic, AI was encroaching on pretty complex jobs. For example, AI is better at diagnosing cancer than any doctor on the planet. If somebody can write an algorithm, and it could be AI, that predicts 100% of the judgment calls and processes in your job, it will be automated. And we're already seeing jobs like junior tax clerks, personal assistants, and supermarket cashiers being replaced by machines. For the rest of us, for knowledge workers, it will be a little bit different. We'll see the more simple and routine tasks in our jobs cheese sliced away by AI. And listen, where AI is better, there's very little point in competing. Far better to differentiate yourself from machines. And of course, there's an irony here. As machines become a bigger part of our life, it's far better to be more, not less human. There is some good news. Where AI is weak, we are strong, and vice versa. So it's a great time to start reassessing and valuing your unique human gifts. I'm talking about things like your ability to find meaning in your work, critical thinking, common sense, a sense of humor, empathy, passion, and yes, curiosity. As the great artist Pablo Picasso once said, computers are useless. They only give you answers. Thanks to neuroscience, we know curiosity is hardwired into an ancient part of our brain. When you explore with curiosity, your brain secretes a neurotransmitter called dopamine. Dopamine is sometimes called the motivation molecule because it's associated with higher levels of drive and concentration and creativity. When you're low on dopamine, it's difficult to get out of bed in the morning. Other symptoms include being depressed or having a low sex drive. When you've got lots of dopamine in your system, it's really pleasurable. And what's really interesting is over time, the relationship between the dopamine hits and your curiosity become a virtuous circle. It becomes a kind of benign addiction. In essence, you became your own drug dealer. Unlike other drug dealers, your brain will encourage you to get off your sofa every now and then. And it doesn't have a disposable phone or a facial tattoo. Here's the deeply cool thing about curiosity. It's not a fixed trait like having blue eyes. It's more like mercury in a thermometer. It rises and falls depending on what you do day to day. The rest of this video contains 5 proven habits to help make your temperature rise. Facebook and other social media apps serve you information based on your past behavior and the behavior of millions of other people that are similar to you. It means the information that's come your way has been edited. In effect, your past clicks built an echo chamber that's just for you. And this is highly pleasurable. I mean, how often in life do you get what you want every time? The problem is we're not well adapted to cope with this. We're the product of millions of years of evolution in hunter-gatherer tribes. And back then we learnt to be highly suspicious of new ideas, attracted to dramatic news, and we didn't like strangers that might endanger us. These hardwired prehistoric cognitive biases are simply mental shortcuts to make faster decisions. They kept your ancestors alive. Your forebears were simply the fastest to react when the shadow of the saber-toothed tiger fell across the entrance to the cave. It's why we're here. While cognitive biases were once useful to us, now they can cause us a real problem. For one, they urge us to reach for our smartphones like toddlers grabbing at sugary sweets. Confirmation bias, for example, urges us to go out in the world and try and find information that simply confirms our views and preconceptions instead of finding out anything new. And the AI-enabled algorithms that power social media know this and use it to their advantage. Confirmation bias is a personal problem for all of us, but it's also damaging our democracy. Take the angry, misinformed mob that stormed the US Capitol in Washington back in January. They were utterly convinced that election had been stolen, despite the readily available evidence to the contrary. That wasn't just an assault on democracy. It was an assault on reality itself. The computer scientist Alan Kay once said, "A change of perspective is worth 80 IQ points." Well, I think it's high time we all came together and reclaimed the truth. Here's a few simple ways to do that for yourself. First, always check your sources. When you find something interesting online, always ask yourself, is this from a dependable person or organisation? And is there a way I could cross-check it with another source? The second is to turn on your radar. So after you finish this video, just write down all the books and magazines and podcasts and YouTube channels and blogs that you're engaging with every day. What are the conferences and training courses and groups that you're part of each year? How can you push yourself into new domains of knowledge? As the satirist Jonathan Swift once wrote, "Falsehood flies and the truth comes limping after it." Well, I think now lies are on digital steroids. So as a creative leader, it's never been more important to engage with what's actually going on, to form a fact-based view of the world. Well, I hope those simple things can help you to knock a few holes in that echo chamber that we all tend to build around ourselves. On to habit 3. The World Economic Forum recently forecast that every 4 years or so, around 40% of our knowledge base needs to be discarded and replaced with something new. In this fast-changing context, we all need to get comfortable with how to unlearn to relearn. Now, that takes time, which is always a scarce resource. And it doesn't help that we're being distracted on an unprecedented and industrial scale. The smartphone is the most successful consumer product in history. So why do so many of us feel we're being enslaved? It's because left unmanaged, smartphones destroy our ability to learn, to think, to create, because they constantly interrupt us. Of course, some of the apps are labor saving and you can access the world's knowledge through these incredible devices. But the issue is proximity. The proximity to specialized and personalized social media feeds and always on work emails can lead to addiction and continual distraction if you're not careful. In the acclaimed 2020 Netflix documentary, The Social Dilemma, the ex-Google strategist James Williams calls this effect the largest, most standardized, most centralized form of attentional control in human history. Let's just take my hero Albert Einstein as an example of how this might impact. He famously did his creative thinking during the slack times in his job as a patent clerk. Do you think we would have had his theories if he'd also had an Instagram account? It's pretty ironic that to successfully differentiate from artificial intelligence, we occasionally need to disengage from the devices it powers. As the ability to focus becomes less common, those who can do it will become more valuable. It can really help to be inspired by the learning habits of the world's most successful people. When Bill Gates was the executive chairman of Microsoft back in the 90s, he found a way to prioritize learning in his life. Every year, he would take 2 think weeks away from the office in a secluded cottage, and he would just read and reflect. And it was during these periods of solitude that he stumbled upon the ideas which powered Microsoft's success for decades. The list of learning junkies goes on and includes Walt Disney, Frank Lloyd Wright, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Oprah Winfrey, Warren Buffett, Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos. It goes on. Now, for someone like Bill Gates, of course, a think week, an entire week, is a little bit easier to arrange. For the rest of us, that might be a challenge. But what you can do is try the 5-hour rule. This means, however busy you are, find 1 hour 5 times every week to work on your development, your learning, your curiosity. It really adds up over 6 months, over a year. In fact, it's life-changing. Have you ever noticed when you learn something new? It could be a new brand of car or a novel breed of dog or something about a new pair of shoes. Those things seem to turn up everywhere. The streets are full of them. This effect can be explained by an interesting piece of psychological research. Your curiosity follows an inverted U-shape. This means if you find out something new in a new domain of knowledge, it piques your interest to find out more. Your new obsession turns up everywhere. New knowledge in a new domain primes your brain to be more interested in that subject. It's kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy. It just goes on and drags you in. Becoming a knowledge explorer pays serious dividends for your creative potential. Creativity, innovation generally happens when one idea from a particular domain of knowledge jumps the fence and lands in a different field. Here's an example. Did you ever wonder why we have so many fonts in our word processor programs? It was because the late Steve Jobs snuck in the back of a calligraphy course after he dropped out of college. And that early experience of studying the art of handwriting made him a serious font nerd for the rest of his life. Learning new stuff builds little outposts in your mind. It's later when your brain builds a road between these outposts that you have a new idea. I'm sometimes asked, what's the best single piece of advice you'd give to someone hoping to be a better creative leader? This is it. Stop trying to provide all the answers. Instead, ask better questions. So curious questions are not closed questions. Those are the type asked by prosecution lawyers, which lead to a yes or no answer. Closed questions are pretty good at establishing the facts, but they don't take you anywhere new. Great questions are open questions. Questions like, why do we do it this way? What if we tried that way instead? Why not? Open questions lead to creative conversations. So may I suggest a new key performance indicator in your professional life? Questions per day. It's a fantastic way to measure how you express your own curiosity and the creative conversations that you spark around you. After I left hospital and recovered from meningitis, I was given a reading award by my primary school. Came with a prize, a copy of The Last of the Mohicans by James Fenimore Cooper. Now, I love reading, but I think you'd need to be 200 years old to like that book. I've checked, it's a reading age of 13 or upwards. I was 7, utterly baffled. I've kept my guilty secret all these years from my parents and my teachers. I never read it. Curiosity doesn't always click, it's personal. But if you try these 5 powerful but simple habits, you can grow your potential, demolish your echo chamber, Check your sources. Find time to unlearn, to relearn, become a knowledge explorer, ask better questions. Together they mix into a curiosity cocktail. It's a gateway drug to experimentation, invention, imagination. Take the blue pill for a lifetime of addiction to curiosity and creativity.